So much for joining us. This meeting is being recorded, as you can see. That's a housekeeping note I will share with you in a couple minutes. My name is Ann Carter-Mulligan. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at the Batten School. Really appreciate you tuning in with us this evening. I wish we could welcome you to Garrett, which you see on the slide, but you'll certainly have many opportunities to visit once you come to grounds this fall. So to begin with, congratulations on making this incredible move. UVA is a great school, lots and lots of great programs, and we're so glad that you're taking some time tonight to learn a little bit more about ours. As you saw, we're recording this session, so it will be available to access later. We'll answer your questions in the second part of the session, so feel free to add those at any time in the chat box, and we'll get to them. You're also, of course, welcome to ask those in real time during the Q&A. If you don't mind your voice forever being enshrined on the internet. So whatever your comfort level is there is good for us. Here's the agenda. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Batten School. I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Laura Toscano and Courtney Leisensnyder. They're going to share more about our programs. Courtney is going to facilitate the highlight of tonight, which is that Q&A session with some wonderful students who we also have on the call, who will share a bit more with you about their perspective as student members of our Batten community. So we will get right to it. Batten is an upper school at UVA, so students typically join one of our programs in their third year or their fourth year. There are exceptions to that rule. Our programs, save for one, are all application-based and competitive, and they focus on leadership, policy, and equipping you with skills to really create impactful, lasting change. So at its most basic level, Batten really works to educate and train the next generation of policy and citizen leaders to act on behalf of society in some fashion. But I'm going to play a video for you from our Dean, Ian Solomon, who will tell us a little bit more about the very unique way that Batten does that. So let me first optimize for video so that the sound sounds good. And here we go.
I am Ian Solomon, Dean of the Frank Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy at the University of Virginia. Across the country and around the world, we find ourselves in a time of extraordinary challenge. It's a crucible of character and courage, a training boot camp in building resilience, perseverance, and adaptability. Some of us are struggling with overwhelming personal circumstances, difficult economic conditions, health problems, or myriad social and emotional wounds. My heart is with you. We face a profound time of division and national upheaval. It pains me to see our American tapestry tearing apart amid these challenges rather than knitting together. Back in 2007, the late Frank Batten Sr. said, "Never has there been a greater need for enlightened and ethical leaders prepared for public life in their communities, in their professions, in the world at large." That observation is even more true today. We need to meet this moment, now, here. And that's no small feat. But I am confident that we can rise to this challenge as we have in the past. That confidence stems from the work we are doing every day here at the Batten School. We are developing the type of policy leaders that the world needs right now. Ethical, passionate, empathetic, curious, humble, committed to serving the greater good. We are doing that with the unique approach that infuses leadership with policy and policy with leadership. Our work is as timely as it is vital. We believe that leadership is built on hope, on a positive vision for the future, on a belief that we can make tomorrow better than today. That is our mission. That is our charge, and that is our promise to you. My dad often told me that the best way to predict the future is to create it. As you consider your path forward, seize the opportunity to be the artist of your life, the author of your own story. The world yearns for your moral courage and your ability to thrive in a rapidly changing environment and to lead diverse communities. If you share the passion and commitment that I have, that our students have, that our faculty, alumni, and staff have, to developing the kind of people and ideas that will strengthen our democracy and solve humanity's toughest challenges, then I encourage you, join us at the Batten School. We welcome you into our community of purpose and action.
All right. So I really love, here we go. Okay, love that video because I think Dean Solomon lays out what makes Batten really so critical and so special in this moment. Part of what makes us unique is that dual focus on leadership and policy. So at Batten, you'll receive best-in-class knowledge and access to cutting-edge research. You'll build skills in data analysis, but we'll also help you to cultivate a leadership portfolio that includes things like how to analyze group behavior, how to negotiate and navigate conflict, how to be an effective communicator and critical thinker, how really to be an engaged and effective citizen. It's a very, very practical degree that leads to a wide variety of professional outcomes. We think you really can't learn about policy in a vacuum. We really want you to be able to move beyond theory, to identify solutions, but also implement them so you can meet challenges and become change agents. Our school really values service and engagement, and our students are active leaders on grounds and really deeply involved in and outside the classroom. Small by design. So as one of UVA's smaller schools, our emphasis is on a cohort model where your connections to your classmates, to faculty, to support staff, all help you thrive and grow. We talk about the Batten community a lot. Our students will back that up, maybe ad nauseum. But it's really important to us that you get a lot of individual support from your peers, from your faculty, and support staff like our admissions office. For students in our degree programs, we have a dedicated career services office that helps you find internships and employment. We put a lot of resource and heft behind providing students with that support. We are interdisciplinary, so UVA has, as you already know or will learn, a lot of interdisciplinary majors and a number of policy majors. Ours really looks at the ways that social psychology, economics, history, politics, ethics, law all intersect and shape policy. Just as importantly, our faculty have really diverse backgrounds as scholars and practitioners in the domestic and global spheres. They are well-versed both in thinking about, but also doing real policy work. So our dean, Dean Solomon, was in the Obama administration in the Treasury Department and at the World Bank. We have former UN staff on faculty. We have an undersecretary in the Department of Homeland Security on staff. All of these folks bring their experience to bear in the classroom. And as a result, that classroom setting is really interactive. It's very hands-on, it's collaborative. The focus is on experiential and applied learning. We are a professional school, so it's pragmatic. It's really designed to equip you for the real world. All right. There's a lag tonight. I don't know what the deal is. So 4 programs open to undergrads at UVA. I'll start with the graduate path. The MPP is for students receiving their undergrad degree outside of Batten. You major in something else. You begin taking a mix of Batten graduate courses and finishing your undergrad degree in that final year of undergrad. You walk the lawn, you graduate with your undergraduate degree. You do a required summer internship as part of the program. And then the final year is all graduate work at Batten. You're a full-time grad student. Students typically enter this program apply into this program in their 3rd year. If you intend to graduate early, you can expedite that timeline, but it's really important to do some course planning and talk to us if you want to pursue the accelerated path early. You see the prerequisites here. This should give you a hint that it's a really quantitative program. There's microeconomics and a calculus-based math course required. We do accept AP credit to fulfill, in particular, that calc course. Lots of students do that. We do encourage students to take, if you plan on making AP credit count for the prereq, taking a collegiate level math course. It really helps to kind of demonstrate proficiency and also build some really valuable skills that you'll use in the program. So we have a list of courses that we recommend if that's something you're interested in exploring further. You see the interdisciplinary lens here. So there are courses in behavioral economics, social psychology, research methods and data analysis, and then there are discrete policy areas that you study. It's kind of a choose your own adventure. You can focus on whatever policy is most interesting to you. The focus is on the application of knowledge. So the culminating project is an applied policy project where you work as a consultant with a client to solve a real world issue. It's rigorous, it's hard. You'll hear from Dan a little bit later. So he's kind of a phenom, especially as far as quantitative work goes. So don't let him short sell it. It's a difficult final undergrad year in particular. It's a deep dive into policy and data analysis. It's really for students who know they want to directly influence the policy sphere in some fashion. We also have an undergraduate major. So if you think about the accelerated program as an immersive deep dive, this is more of a generalist curriculum. It is an interdisciplinary look as well at policy, but it's more from the perspective of effective engagement with the world. There are 3 prerequisite courses for the undergrad major, and the coursework here includes policy and leadership, economic analysis, multidisciplinary context, very similar curriculum, and special topics courses, which are electives where you study the policy areas that you wish. Our goal is for you really to end up being a good consumer of information, savvy at using data to advance a position. You'll have policy knowledge, and then we'll give you the tools to be an active citizen. Overall, our goal through these programs is to help you think critically, to innovate, to write persuasively, to act ethically, and efficiently solve problems. We want to help prepare you for robust participation in public life. You can also pick up one of 2 minors. So this minor in public policy and leadership is a good way to supplement your primary major in another school with some policy and leadership. We like to say that policy is everywhere, whether you're pre-med, pre-law, environmental science, media studies, government, economics. I struggle to think of a discipline where there isn't some policy relevance. So the minor is going to be a broader look at issues in the policy realm with the goal of making you fluent in that language of policy and the ways that it intersects with and informs your chosen field of study. And then we have one final minor, which I will turn things over to my colleague, Laura Toscano, to tell you a little bit more about.
Thank you, Anne. The Social Entrepreneurship minor is a pan-university interdisciplinary program that allows you to take electives across many different schools at UVA. In this minor, your classes will be full of students from many different disciplines, teaching you to work with a diverse group and use design thinking to create the most innovative solutions to real-world problems. The social track of the entrepreneurship minor is housed at Batten, where I help to advise students interested in this field on the minor, their career paths, and in some cases, their own startup ideas for social good. The classes we offer are related to impact investing, entrepreneurial approaches to global development, and equity-based leadership. All the students who apply to this minor are accepted. We believe that no matter what field you go into after graduation, learning to be a change maker is a valuable skill for you to carry with you into your future career. The first step, if you're interested in the social entrepreneurship minor, is to take the first class in the series, which is ENTP 1010, that's Entrepreneurship 1010, called Startup, and to connect with me if you're interested in learning more. Back to you, Anne.
Awesome, thanks, Laura. All right, so so that you can set your expectations appropriately, I like to talk a little bit about tuition and financial aid right out of the gates so that you can think about what's coming down the pipeline. For either minor, there's really no difference from a tuition standpoint. You'll continue to pay your tuition to your home school. For the undergraduate major, there is differential tuition that is a bit higher than that at the College of Arts and Sciences, just like some of the other professional schools at UVA, including architecture, nursing, engineering, commerce. That said, you remain eligible for UVA-wide financial aid, including Access UVA, which meets 100% of demonstrated need if you shift over to the Batten School. So if your need goes up due to higher tuition, your eligibility for aid also scales up. So if you are a student with demonstrated need, your bill should not be impacted by coming to Batten. The accelerated program is structured a bit differently. Of course, the financial benefit is you're getting a graduate degree in 1 additional year instead of 2. So your first year in the program, you pay undergrad tuition to your home department. Financial aid is offered, as I said, with our undergraduate major through Student Financial Services as UVA-wide resource. In the second year, you move to a graduate tuition rate, and there is no central resource for financial aid anymore. All financial aid is offered through schools and departments. And as a result, as you can imagine, it's a bit more limited. We don't have that big pot of UVA money to draw from. We do have some funding at Batten. It includes need and merit-based fellowships, teaching assistantships, which are the best deal because they offer in-state tuition plus a stipend plus health insurance. So that's kind of the gold standard. There's also federal work study. There's employment at Batten otherwise or elsewhere on grounds, all designed to really tick down the cost of attendance. But the caveat in bright stars here, you should not anticipate that financial aid will fully cover that cost of tuition. The expectation is for most students, they'll have help from their families, they'll take out loans. It's really the philosophy in higher ed more generally with the graduate degree is you're making yourself a more valuable entity professionally. You tend to be able to command a higher salary, so you're expected to take on more of the burden of debt. You're essentially investing in yourself and in your future. I say that not to scare anyone, and we can absolutely talk to you and explore different models for helping to finance your MPP, but I hate the idea that that would take anyone by surprise. So that future that I mentioned, what can you do with a Batten degree? The good news for taking on all of that debt is lots and lots of things, many great employment outcomes across a really wide variety of sectors. This is class of 2019 data showing that 98% of the class was employed within 6 months of graduation. The class of 2020, in the midst of an economic downturn and a global pandemic, still hit 91% employment in the first 6 months. We don't yet have a graph breaking down 2020 numbers, but if you come to an info session in the fall, we should have that data for you. But from 2019, you see here that many of our grads go into consulting, both for the private sector and the government, reflecting that broad foundation you receive in critical thinking and in project management. You'll see grads also enter direct government service, the business world, nonprofits, research institutions and think tanks, the service organizations, as well as grad school, particularly law school is a very common path, especially for our undergraduate BA students. I'd say as many as 10% of each graduating class goes right into law school. And that number grows after students build a few years of professional experience. Many of them then pivot to law school from there. If you think about the skill set that we're helping you cultivate, it's very transferable. Strong analytical skills, you know how to write and design and execute a project. You're a proficient public speaker, you're a problem solver. Those are exactly the skills you use in law. Our top destination is DC, but we also have grads on Wall Street. We have grads in the tech sector on the West Coast. We have grads working globally. A sampling of employers from this class. I have a list. It includes Deloitte, Booz Allen Hamilton, the UN, MasterCard, the FDA, Major League Baseball. That might be a little bit of an outlier. Lots of representation in the federal agencies, the Commerce Department, Justice Department, the Navy. We have US Senate staff grads, Secret Service grads, Teach for America grads. So the bottom line is there's a really big cross-section of industry and government and public service represented. All right, I'm going to breeze through this really quickly because I feel like I'm taking too much time. A little bit of admissions and application information. This is info for our competitive entry programs. So for the BA or for the policy and leadership minor, you apply spring second year. For the accelerated program, you apply spring third year to begin the following fall in all of those programs. Prior to that fall, you complete the prerequisite courses to start to build that foundational knowledge. So you have all the way up until that fall, you can take prerequisite courses the semester you apply, you can take it in the summer. Our programs are very competitive. We intentionally keep our numbers small so that we can continue to provide an exceptional academic experience. So that you see that reflected in the admissions rates that you see on this slide. And just the caveat, the social entrepreneurship minor, as Laura noted, it's different. It requires an application, but it accepts all applicants. The timeline is very similar. The application is due in the springtime. And if you have questions about the application for that program, Laura is a great resource. So for our competitive entry programs, what are we looking for? Good news. There's good news. There's no one typical applicant. No magic GPA, no prescribed set of extracurriculars, clubs, orgs, jobs that you might have had to perform. You'll be able to walk through our applications once they open this fall. You'll see we ask for a resume or a CV, a couple essays. For the Excel and for the BA, we require recommendations, and we take a look at your unofficial transcripts. Across all of those pieces, we really want to see your passion, your engagement, your interest in policy, your academic growth over time. That passion and engagement can be in whatever it is you are passionate and engaged with. You don't have to think about Batten from a competitive standpoint. I have to be in this club, I have to do this, I have to do this. That rings pretty false, I think, through the application process. What we really see is, how are you deeply, deeply involved in the things that you love, and how do you practice that passion? So as far as academics are concerned, we expect peaks and valleys along the way. It's really part of your academic journey. It's the balance of strengths of all of these things that you bring to the table that determine admission. Okay, so here is our information. Feel free to reach out anytime to Courtney or Laura or I. You can visit our website to learn more. You can also sign up for virtual appointments right now, but in-person appointments starting in the fall. You can email the general email address that you see here for more information. I mentioned the fall, we'll host lots of events throughout the year to share our information about our programs, our application process, other resources. We are available to sit down and give you one-on-one guidance and feedback, or we can hook you up with a Batten ambassador who is a current student to talk about the school from their perspective. And we have some really wonderful former and current Batten ambassadors that I'm going to turn things over to now. So Courtney, I'll kick it over to you to start the Q&A.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening to you all. My name is Courtney. I'm the Assistant Director of Admission at Batten. So happy to work with you over the next couple of years as you explore. I'm joined by two of my absolute favorites, Dan and Jackie, who I'm adding to the screen now. They both have different unique paths as they made their way to Batten and are exploring different things while they're current students and what they're doing over the next few years. So I'm going to turn it to Dan and Jackie to introduce themselves, maybe tell our audience where you're from, which program you are currently in, maybe formerly were in, and then what your policy areas of interest are, maybe future career goals, that sort of thing. We'll start with Dan, who's our current student rep tonight.
Yeah, hey guys, so I'm Dan Nakasone. So I'm from Fort Meade, Maryland, and this is where things are kind of interesting. So I graduated with my undergrad degree in economics this past spring. But I was in the BA for a year for Batten, and then I wanted to switch to the MPP, so I applied to that, and now I'm in the MPP. So I did the BA for a year, and then I'm gonna do the MPP for 2 years. So there's some people that do that, but not a majority of the MPP. So kind of a non-traditional path. But yeah, I first found Batten, I think, Days on the Lawn when I came. Gosh, that would have been spring of 2017. Wow, that's a long time ago. But always been interested since then. Policy areas of interest, national security, kind of economic policy also from the econ undergrad. In terms of what I'm doing post Batten, I am very fortunate. I'm gonna be one of the ones working in the consulting agencies after I get out of Batten. So I kind of saw those numbers up there. I was like, yeah, that looks about right. Jackie,
not a bad path. Jackie is our alum representative tonight.
I'm not that old. So hi everyone, my name is Jackie. I graduated this past May from the BA program, and I am going back to UVA to finish my accelerated master's in public health. So I did the Batten BA, but I was also a double major in global public health through global studies. And with my personal interest in health policy, I decided, okay, well, I can't do the MPP now, so I'll just do the MPH, and been really enjoying it. So I started taking grad classes during my 4th year, and I'm just going back full time and paying that grad tuition now, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, how I stumbled upon Batten, I feel like I'm like the poster child for just very unconventional. Like again, like as Anne and Courtney have said a million times, like there is no particular Batten student that they look for at all. So I came into college pre-med, and very soon after that, not enjoying this pre-med prereqs, but then I took a public health class, which kind of sparked my interest in public health. But it was really through my connections with like upperclassmen and just hearing their advice, and them personally being in the BA program is what brought me to Batten. And so like, if you're thinking that, oh, like I had to have like, worked on the Hill like before applying to Batten, or I had to be in like student council or anything like that, like you did not need to do any of that. Like I volunteered through Madison House, like none of my extracurriculars I would say like were like screaming policy. It's really that like I would say they really find students who like are passionate about or are interested in a certain like policy area, or just like want to be I guess like civically engaged in our community, is what really makes up the Batten cohort. So yeah.
You covered a lot of ground, Jackie. We should just keep you on forever to recruit.
I mean, I'm still here for another year, Courtney.
Oh, I know. You will always be a great ambassador for our program. I'm going to switch gears a little and sort of ask you that similar question, kind of why Batten. I know you addressed it a little, Jackie, but this goes to one of the questions we got from one of our attendees asking, how do you decide BA versus MPP? So why did you end up at Batten in your particular program? I'll let either of you start.
I can go since mine's probably going to be a little more convoluted since I decided twice. So when I first came in, and like I mentioned, I started in the BA, and then if you want to go from the BA to the MPP, first thing, a couple things to keep in mind. One, make sure you have a second major that you're going to do. So I was always going to be a double major in econ and Batten, because you need another major to get your undergrad so you can be an MPP student. I guess really that's the only thing to keep in mind. But so, in kind of looking at the BA, I liked it because, at first I thought like, I think the BA works really well if you just want to be here for 4 years, like whether it's because of financial reasons or, you're someone who doesn't want to stay a 5th year of college. I think you get a really good kind of introduction to that policy world, and kind of like how things work. And you even start to dip your toes into the quantitative stuff in terms of you're basically going to take an intermediate microeconomics class through Batten. You're going to take a econometrics class through Batten. But you're just kind of dipping the toes in the water there. Whereas with the MPP, after I was kind of in the program, and what I found I really liked about it, I found was a lot of the stuff the MPP went a lot more in depth with. With the MPP, you're getting a lot more rigorous, like kind of analytical side of it. Like you take 2 semesters worth of economics and 2 semesters worth of RMDA, which is the Batten's version of econometrics. So you're really learning and being able to become fluent in talking about this stuff, which is, really what drives a lot of policy decisions and what a lot of policy is based on. In addition to that, I really love the idea of the APP, the fact that, like this next year, I still need to figure out who my client's going to be, but that I'll get to work with a client, helping them with a real world problem, and just kind of the experience that brings and the chance of getting that. So that was kind of a lot of the reasons I switched from the BA to the MPP. Then I like kind of the more hands-on, going deeper into the topics there. And I very luckily, the ones that I really enjoyed were the ones that we're going deeper into. I'll let Jack talk about her experience now.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it while I was like introducing myself, but I think for me, I was more interested in like health policy. And so I just thought that like, I was already like planning on applying for the accelerated MPH, and luckily it worked out. So that's just kind of like what drove my decision as to, I would love to have like just kind of like that foundational groundwork and that kind of like generalization for policy and for my undergrad, and then going more specifically into like public health for grad. yeah.
One other thing to consider is if you want to go into the public service, like, or work for the public sector, excuse me, especially on the federal government side. I'm not sure about state governments, but I know federal government, if you get a master's degree, that like bumps you up 2 pay grades, which in DC is like a $10,000 difference, or $8,000 to $10,000 difference. So that was another reason, because I thought I was going public sector right out of college, but whoops, didn't happen.
It's okay. And the economist in you, Dan, is coming out looking at the cost and benefit there of starting with a higher salary, but definitely something to consider. One of the themes that I saw in questions coming in was, what do I really get involved with? What do I start studying when I get here? I know, Dan, you mentioned that you always knew kind of econ was in your back burner. So what advice do you have for our first years on the call, as well as second years who are probably just really getting to experience UVA this fall? How do you advise students in terms of deciding on a major, or maybe weighing, Batten versus some of those other policy majors like PPL or PST?
I can start again. In terms of just like general major stuff, and I know this is corny, but it's just gonna be like, take classes that interest you. Like, as a kid, my dad was an econ major, and he'd always be like, oh, opportunity cost, rule of 72, and like, make sure you invest your money well. I was like, oh, economics seems interesting. And so I took like the intro classes and really loved it, and that's what kind of got me there. But if there's something that like you just think you might be interested, like, all of my best friends at UVA were classics majors. They because in high school they studied Greek and Latin, and they loved it, and they loved the classes at UVA. So I guess take things you're interested in. In terms of deciding between like Batten and things such as PPL, PST, I think one thing you want to kind of think about there is, do you want kind of a more, and this doesn't say one's better than the other. It's very much all personal preference, but I feel like Batten is a much more kind of applied, real world kind of learning of this stuff. Like, you're actually like, you're in both the BA and MPP, you're like writing memos, like suggesting actual policies. Oh yeah, thank you, Anne, for clearing up the UVA jargon there.
I might have gotten PPL wrong, but that's close.
Yeah, I would have gotten it wrong also. But so back like in Batten, you're like doing kind of real world stuff, and in the sense of like, you're like proposing policies, you're critiquing policies, you're looking at the ethics of policies. Whereas PPL and PST, in my understanding, it's like you're looking at kind of the academic side of this stuff. Like, what is the thought behind like how politics works, and like what is the philosophy almost? Because yeah, philosophy is kind of rooted in a lot of academic subjects. So it depends on what you like there. Like, I know one of my roommate last year was a PPL major, and he loved kind of that idea of like, I think I was asking him, his thesis was something on like how John Locke's thinking during the Renaissance like influences like policy or politics today, whereas like people who write APP projects for the accelerated MPP, like that's the client-sided oriented project, they're writing stuff like how do we help the AIDS epidemic in like Africa, and like working with real world clients in that sense. So I like think that gives kind of a good distinction between the two there.
Yeah, Dan, I feel like you covered it pretty well. I think also just, talk to upperclassmen. That's how I found Batten, really, and really understanding like their journey through the Batten school. And I feel like just, again, like personal testimonies and you all coming to this info session is like a great start, just hearing our experiences with Batten. And don't let that stop you from, meeting other people and asking them, oh, like, how is your major? Or like, what kind of classes do you have to take? And I would say for Batten, especially like differentiating from like different, like I would say similar but different programs like PPL and PST, is that, again, like hitting home the idea of like, it's so application based. A lot of classes that you can take, like elective classes, they have you work on client work. Like I personally did, I took a class on NGOs, and we actually got to create like a portfolio as to, actually give more context. So the class, like we got a bunch of like grant money from this foundation, And we got to interview and learn about all these different NGOs and their missions. At the end of the semester, we got to present like a portfolio of like how we wanted to divide up this money to give to these organizations, and like the winning portfolio gets implemented. So like things like that, like you actually see like the work that you're doing like produce results, which I think is like super cool.
No, that is still one of the coolest classes that Paul Martin teaches. So glad you brought that up as a potential class that prospective students can take. Well, I can keep going with questions. I want to take a pause real quick, see if anyone in the audience has questions. You're welcome to unmute, put your questions in the chat. Otherwise, I can keep asking Jackie and Dan questions all evening. Well, while we wait for questions, this was a really great question that we got from the audience. What has been your biggest growing experience while at Batten? You both have been at Batten for 2 years now, maybe 3 for Dan. What has been the biggest growing experience? You know, you can include the pandemic because I think that's a big growing experience for everyone, or we're just done talking about the pandemic, so feel free.
I'm so tired of talking about the pandemic. Talk about something else.
Mine happens during the pandemic, but that's irrespective because this is anyone that does the MPP. I think they're gonna tell you this is their biggest growing experience, and it's really that first semester in the MPP. I was very lucky that I came from economics background going to the MPP, because even though I did that, you take 2 classes your first semester. One is like intermediate microeconomics, and the other is and it's called like economics of public policy. And then the second one is research methods and data analysis analytics. It's RMDA, which is basically econometrics, which if you don't come from an econ background, those classes will kick your butt. And even coming from the econ background, those classes were kicking my butt. And I think there was a lot of growth there, that it really taught me, the class stuff like balance, keeping a planner, things like that. But I think the biggest thing it taught me, was working with other people and the teamwork there. And there's one thing amiss that usually if you're in the MPP, and Jack, I'm sure you can talk about this with the BA also, but everyone's just always sitting around the great hall on between classes, doing work there, and you just like nudge your neighbor and like, hey, how do you do this? Not really sure on there. But even with that, I was still like able to find time, like me and one of my friends, we had like a pretty consistent schedule every Thursday. I had the last class that finished on Thursday at 4:45, and then we'd meet up at one of our houses and work on a problem set. And most Thursdays we were going till like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Every night. But it was good just getting that rhythm and and like trust in a group member and stuff like that. So that semester as a whole was a big growing experience for me.
I would say for me, I think it's getting over imposter syndrome in Batten. And I think as I said, I didn't come from a background that's super technical and policy or anything like that. My family background, definitely not. So just kind of going in and taking intro to public policy. I didn't take any Batten classes before actually, before starting my 3rd year. And so just kind of sitting with all these other hundreds of other students who are 1st and 2nd years, and I'm a 3rd year, and I'm I don't know what's going on. So I think just getting over that and just understanding that you earned your spot here, and and Courtney and the rest of the missions team had faith in you to put you through, and believing in your own abilities, as well as again leaning onto your classmates. Definitely echo everything that Dan said about no, definitely can be working with people in your cohort. I have a main group chat, my study group, and we're always helping each other. And whenever we have big exams, we're just oh, right, gotta do study group, gotta at this time on this day, maybe for multiple days leading up to the exam. And so I'm always so thankful for those relationships and the people I've met in Batten for that reason. And yeah, I would say definitely understanding that like times are tough. Like in the BA, like we take RMDA, we take an econ class, but not as hard as the MPPs for sure. Like they have like a whole other level of like difficulty, but it's still like challenging for people who, you know, never used like a programming language before, or like aren't as like savvy with like econ like concepts and stuff like that. And so I would say again, like trusting yourself, but also like not being afraid to like ask for help and, you know, lean on to your classmates.
I think that is great advice for all students to connect, stay connected, and then regardless of the path you go down, just know that if you apply to an application-based major and we see something in you, you are going to do great things. But great advice for asking for help. I know that is always really, really hard to do, particularly when you're in a brand new environment. Well, we had a great question in the chat, and I know both of you have done internships. So why don't we talk about everyone's favorite people, the career services team, and about the internships that you've done, and what you may be doing in terms of seeking out different opportunities. We'll start with Jackie this time.
So in terms of internships, I know Anne mentioned this earlier, but the Batten Career Services, like often, like Steve Hiss is like amazing. Like we always get like bi-weekly newsletters of just like new internships or like new job opportunities. And so it's almost like a customized, yes, frankly speaking, love frankly speaking. So it's just like kind of like just like a laundry list of all these different types of internships, all these different types of like jobs, fellowships, whatever it may be. And it's like also by like location, and you can tell like by like the title, like, you know, what type of work or type of field it'll be. And it's just like super helpful in that case. And also like as Batten students, like this is like a more specialized like career services that we have in like in-house. And so like you can always just book like an appointment about, you know, talking about like how, like interview prep, or like just searching for opportunities, getting cover letters and resumes checked. I know like everyone's resume and cover letters can be at very different places, but definitely great resources from there. And also negotiating salaries. So like when that time comes, like you have someone or people to talk to get to the place that you want to be. And so I think for me personally, currently I'm actually interning at a consulting firm, doing more specifically with healthcare consulting. So that's been a really interesting experience, just because like that was kind of like my first real like consulting experience. Again, I know like you saw all the pie charts that like a lot of like students kind of either go to the private sector, public sector, or whatever it may be. But I just wanted the experience. So like, who knows, maybe I will like apply to the public sector this coming cycle. So we'll see.
Yeah, and Jackie hit the nail on the head, like Batten career service. Just outstanding. I think Steve Hiss is like one of the best guys ever. When I was applying I interned for BCG last summer, and when I was going for that internship, I literally stopped by his office every week. Like we basically had a standing point where I'd stop by every week and we just run behavioral interview questions for like 30 minutes. So it's really nice having that resource in terms of a smaller school. In addition to that, kind of like looking at the different type of internships, like I know people that have interned for places such as BCG and Bain. I know someone at Goldman Sachs this summer out of Batten, but you also have a lot more of those kind of classically like public policy. Like one of my good friends, she's interning at like an environmental institute run by the state of Virginia, because she loves environmental policy. And that's where she was kind of felt like she wanted to work, and wants that field she wants to go into. I know people who were interning for the State Department. I know people for the intelligence community. And like, even in addition to all this stuff, like Batten sets up like a lot of great opportunities. Like they will set up like, or they're not setting it up, they're giving you the information from the people who set it up for stuff like such as like info sessions from people in the intelligence community, like the do's and don'ts of security clearances and like how to get one of those, and like they know kind of the cycle of like when you need to be applying for that stuff. Yeah, so there you get a wide ranging. I guess the only people I don't, I know I've heard of people like interning for like nonprofits and stuff, but most of the people I've known are kind of public sector and consulting side. But I know there are people out there with the nonprofits and other.
And also just to add, like, Batten also has a pretty strong alumni network too. I know, like, we keep mentioning Steve Hiss, but like whenever we get his emails, it's like, oh, like there's like a coffee chat for a particular like firm or company, and they're all Batten alums, whether it be BA, MPP, and you're just like talking to people that are just, a couple years older, 1 to 3 years, 4 years older than you. And so and they could relate to like your personal experiences. So that, again, that was another connection for you to have, especially going through the interview process too.
All right. Speaking of connections inside the classroom, we were talking about that earlier. I know we have a few minutes remaining, and I know you all have some glowing remarks about some of our favorite people at Batten, the professors. So why don't you tell me about either your favorite class or your favorite professor, so that way students have a taste and flavor of the academic experience.
I can start, and it's, I was trying to think of what professor, and I might cheat and say two. I might name two professors because one of them is no longer teaching at Batten because he got offered to be a president at University of Tulsa, which I'm happy for him that he's teaching there, or he's not teaching there, excuse me, he's going to be the president there, but sad he had to leave. So for anyone that was at UVA, you probably heard of him, Professor Brad Carson. This guy used to be like Undersecretary of Defense in the Pentagon. He was like the Army's top lawyer, like general counsel for the Army. He was a congressman. He just did a lot of stuff, and he taught a couple seminars each semester, and was just like one of the most brilliant people. Like I remember he was also one of the nice people. Like I didn't know him, and I came as a second year asking if I could take his MPP seminar or his master's level seminar. He said sure, and just kind of signed me into it. But I remember in that class, he one time asked like how many nukes the United States needs, and anyone that's taken a class with Brad Carson knows it's like a trick question, because no matter what you answer, he's just gonna be like, yeah, but what about this? Like, why not one more? Why not two less? Like, he doesn't really care what answer you say. He just wants you to think about it, and he was really good about it that way. Favorite class was when he taught hacking for defense, was one where it's still being taught by a guy who's just as great, John Robinson. But that was one where basically you worked all semester doing a project for the Department of Defense. Like mine was addressing Taliban financing. And so all semester we were having client meetings, we were talking to experts, we were reading articles, congressional testimonies about how the Taliban's financed, which I didn't know until that they make a lot of money off taxing poppy production. So kind of drug, because a lot of those poppy used for heroin then. But you do that all semester, and you're working and presenting, and you're learning a lot of real life skills. And at the end, you actually get to go up to the Pentagon and present. So he was my favorite, but Professor Mbidi is a close second. If you do the Master of Public Policy, you'll have him for Econ 1. Just one of the sweetest souls. A quick story about him. I got COVID during the semester, and I had emailed him because we'd had an exam during it, and I was like, hey, like I don't have my calculator with me. Is it right if I use my calculator on my iPad? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. But then he was like, what type of soup do you like? And I was like, any soup's good, like chicken noodle. And he's like, okay, awesome. I'm gonna send you some soup. And I was just expecting, him to stop by with like a couple cans of Campbell's soup and leave them on the doorstep. But no, he like Uber Eats me Noodles and Company. And so he's just like, he was a guy that really cared about his students a lot. So you're a really great guy.
I cannot promise that all of your professors will deliver you soup. I think he's a special case.
Yeah, I think for me, probably be Professor Chow and Professor Johannesson. The Professor Chow, she teaches, at least like when I was in the BA, she taught Intro to Civic Leadership. But she recently had a baby, so I don't know really what her plans are now. But I also took a negotiations, like short semester class with her. So it was 5 weeks long. And intro to civic leadership is usually like 2.5 hours long. Okay, great. I'm glad that she's coming back. But yeah, it's usually 2.5 hours long. And for those who have never taken like a 2.5 hour long class, they can get very tiring after sitting there for an hour. But each class, she was just so engaging, like unbelievably engaging. And you learn so much. It's like kind of your first like leadership class. And this is a class you can take before, or at least during like when I was in the BA program, this was a class you could take before actually being in the Batten school. So anyone of any major could actually take this class. And so each week would be like a different topic. So can't really remember them anymore, but she would kind of give you like a lesson, like kind of like just like the idea around it. And then you do like an activity to like actually put into practice. And then she does like this thing where it's like, oh yeah, but did you think about it this way? And then just blows your mind and you're like, wow, amazing. So definitely love her. One of my favorite professors of all times at UVA, just how passionate and engaging she is, and just how she really wants to establish that connection with like her students. And you can tell just like the way she like lectures is just like, wow, like she's very, very into it, like nonstop. My second professor, I would say, it was, I mentioned, was Professor Johannesson, and he taught Intro to Public Policy and comparative policy history. And again, like for me, coming from a background with like really like I didn't have a policy background at all, but just like the way he like went about teaching it and like really like introducing it, like the concepts and going into depth. Like I think comparative policy history is probably one of my favorite classes, just because you kind of understand, like, I don't know how to describe this. So you not only look at like US policies, but you look at policies from other countries. And then you do like this giant project, like a group project, where you're looking at different policies from different countries tackling this one policy issue, and like seeing like what were the good parts or the bad parts, and what would be your solution for like the US. And so I think like definitely he was one of the more influential professors that I've had at UVA.
And a perfect plug for that prereq course, Intro to Public Policy. So if you're interested in the BA program, you get to take his class, and then if you do the minor or the BA, you can take that Intro to Civic Leadership class. So perfect plugs. Well, we have touched on practically every component of the Batten experience tonight. So I think that these were some great questions that came in from pre-registration as well as during the session. But with all of our info sessions, we always like to end with this question. What advice would you give to someone who is considering a path at Batten?
Jackie, do you want to start us off with this one? I think I might have a think here.
Well, I think like just like from the top of my head, and just to clarify, Courtney, you're saying like as they're starting their like Batten journey, like
just right now as a first year, second year, thinking, is Batten for me?
I would say it's never too early to connect with professors. I think I know a lot of people had done like research with like Batten professors. I know there's like the National Security Policy Center, I think, in Batten, and there's like social entrepreneurship. Like there's so many different like clubs and like organizations in the Batten School, like as an entity. And I think there were people that weren't Batten students in those clubs, right? Courtney, am I right? Yeah. So it's like there's like, just because it's like Batten, like it's under the Batten School, does not mean that you can't already get involved, is my point. And so when it comes to research, definitely reach out to professors, just because like, again, they were like leading professionals in their own respective fields, and their research is like pretty interesting. I just personally like didn't have the time to do it. Otherwise I would. But yeah, I would say just because like your first year, second year, like don't let, oh, like I have to be in Batten to like be involved. Like, no, by all means, like Batten School is still part of the UVA community, and I would highly encourage you guys to take that leap of faith.
Yeah, explore very broadly. And that's a good one. And come to Batten Hours every Monday.
Yes. Or are they coming back?
In person.
Okay. Amazing. Amazing. Oh,
So what you guys don't know that Jack and I are laughing at is that Batten Hours have free food there. And for an upperclassman who doesn't want to cook for himself and who isn't on a meal plan, they're life changing. And the talks, and like this isn't just, the talks are also very great. But like the inside joke around Batten is that when you hear Batten Hour, everyone just thinks they're free food. But no, the Batten Hours are, we've had incredible guests, like from Carla Williams, like in charge of the athletic department, to policy leaders in their field on like racial diversity. I think we had one on the Supreme Court right after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. So yeah, they're really great. In terms of the advice that I would give, honestly, I've been find myself just telling people this advice a lot. This is advice I got when going for a job interview. Just kind of really enjoy everything. Like Jackie was talking about this a lot. Like, don't get caught up. Like I love Batten to death, and I am so glad I'm in the community. But it's okay if you're not in Batten. Also, like if things don't work out, like don't feel crushed. Like there are still ways to get where you want to in life. And even speaking of that, like as you're leaning towards Batten, don't feel like you have to tailor your things. Like we were talking earlier, like Batten has to tell you like the diverse, we have people in Batten who are student athletes, like on the football team. There's a kid in my master's cohort who's on the basketball team. You have people like me who did like Model UN and were like, and like stuff like that, which is fine. And, it's somewhat nerdy, but I'm okay with that. And then you have people like who are very involved in like their sororities and fraternities, like from the Greek life. And it's really just about like getting into Batten is just like authentically being you, I think, in a lot of ways, and not going for what you think they're looking for. Because, and I think that's a lot of things in life, but that's a whole tangent for another time. But I think that's just the one thing I'd like recommend, like, whether you just finish your first year and you have 3 years left, or you're coming in as a first year 4 years, or your third year and you have 2 years left, or whatever it is, like the real value of college I found is like the experiences you have outside the classroom, whether it's working on the projects for the class or, learning the habits that you do. And I think a lot of times people, especially at UVA, can kind of get caught up in like, I need to be in this one thing or this other thing. And like, no, things will work out as easy it is for me to say sitting on this side, but as someone who's also been denied from a lot of things, I look back and like things work out. So just kind of enjoy and like do things that interest you. And yeah.
Ending on some sage wisdom on this Tuesday evening. Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you, Anne and Laura. I'm going to bring you back on the screen for a final goodbye. So don't be frightened if your picture moves. But we really appreciate you all spending your Tuesday evening with us, learning a little bit more about Batten. If you do have any other questions, we are currently taking appointments, as Anne said. So if something sparks something this evening in you and you're like, I really want to learn more, don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll start updating our website soon with fall events. So we will get to see you at the building that is behind Anne in Garrett Hall, which is right by the amphitheater. So come see us. We'd love to get to know you in person for once. But thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your evening.